It's the ball and chain that stays with you until the day you die. It cannot be expunged or forgiven. It's the student debt bubble, and it's the looming crisis hanging over the head of every American. Weeks ago marked the day that student debt hit the $1 trillion mark. And for the students who are the lowest and in the lowest economic tier, things just got substantially tougher. Starting July 1st, federal Pell Grants are set to be cut for thousands of students. Here are the students that will be affected by the cuts. 65,000 new college students without diplomas or GEDs. 63,000 students who have been in school more than a new maximum of 6 years under the Pell Grant. 300,000 students will have their grants reduced or eliminated because of more stringent income requirements. So what is going to happen when the student debt bubble bursts? Or can this crisis be averted? For more on that, I'm joined by Sarah Jaffe, Associate Editor at alternate.org. Sarah, what do you think about the recent decision to cut these Pell Grants?
Well, it's class war, Abby. I mean, how else do you phrase it? I mean, I was out at a march last night with a bunch of student activists here, and their new favorite chant is 1, 2, 3, 4, tuition fees are class war. The Pell Grants go to the poorest students. They go to the ones who don't qualify for merit aid. In this case, they're cutting them, as you said, to students who have been in school for over 6 years, which is usually working people who are going back to school or who can't afford to go to school full time. So they're taking it away for, once again, the hardest working people who are trying desperately to live the quote-unquote American dream that says if you go to college and get a degree, you'll get a better job and you'll have a better future.
Sarah, why do you think these austerity measures are always targeted toward the lowest economic, it's like the people who need it the most? I mean, I know you're saying it's class war, but it just seems like it's just over and over again, these talks of eliminating the debt, and it's always just focused right on the people who need it the most.
Those are the people who can't afford lobbyists. I mean, it's pretty simple, right? Who you kick people when they're down, they have a harder time fighting back.
What do you think about this interest rate debate, the freezing of the interest rates? Do you think that this is really going to change things if it's frozen or not frozen? Or do you think that there's a bigger issue at hand and that this is kind of a distraction from that bigger issue?
Well, here's the thing. If they do actually let tuition, the interest rates double, that will materially affect a lot of students. That's going to be thousands and thousands of students who will be paying twice as much interest on their student loans. It's absolutely an issue that we should be concerned about. The problem is right now that both parties in Congress agree we should extend the tuition, freeze the tuition interest rates for a year. That's 1 year. That's still not going to help. The economy is not magically going to be 100% better next year. And meanwhile, they're just fighting over how to pay for it when, by the way, the government makes money on these loans, okay? Even at the lowest interest rate, even though around 3%, they're lending and they're making more money back than they are spending on these loans. So having these stupid arguments about how to pay for it, it's ridiculous.
Sarah, I see that you're wearing a red ribbon, and I know that's in solidarity with the Canadian protests that are happening right now. How does their struggle relate to this struggle about the student debt crisis? Could you talk a little bit about that?
So the red square is actually, it comes from the phrase, I'm sorry, my French is going to be awful, so I'm just not going to do it, but it's a reference to being squarely in the red or in debt. So it's the same struggle there, right? The students in Quebec have been striking yesterday was their 100th day of striking over a tuition hike, which is essentially going to be more debt. There are students in Australia protesting tuition hikes. There are students around this country protesting tuition hikes. The students here at CUNY in New York have been protesting tuition hikes, and they've adopted the red square as part of their own movement. It's a symbol of the debt that we all have. I have student debt. I've had the same student debt for the last 10 years because I've essentially been able to only pay the interest on it for 10 years since I've been out of school. It is a global movement, just like the austerity is the same. It's not exactly the same, but the policies are targeting the same people, and they are hitting in essentially the same ways around the world. And the students in Quebec and the students here in New York have been in communications. People that I know here have been up to Quebec to work with the students up there to learn their student union model and other tactics so that they can figure out how we get 400, 500,000 people in the streets of New York, in the streets of Los Angeles, in the streets of San Francisco.
Well, I was just going to say, it seems like in other countries there are massive protests of students fighting against this debt crisis in their countries, and it just seems like, why did it have to take the student debt to hit $1 trillion? And we're not really seeing that influx of, thousands out in the streets protesting this. I mean, do you think that it's just kind of looming and that we're going to see that if nothing's done about this?
I think the thing with debt is that it's delaying your payments, right? When you are taking out a college student loan, you don't think about having to pay it. You just think, I'm going to get through school, I'm going to get a good job, and I'll pay it off. And that has sort of been true. Although, like I said, I graduated 10 years ago, and I'm still carrying the same ball and chain. But now that the job market is terrible, that something like half of all recent college grads are either unemployed or underemployed, we're seeing the fallacy of that story, which is that you can go to school and you will get a good job, and it doesn't matter how much debt you took out.
Right. I mean, for the first time,
so I think it's creeping up on us here.
Yeah, for the first time, more of those unemployed are college graduates than not. I mean, so what is the solution here, other than, of course, alleviating the debt, expunging it, offering for you to be able to declare bankruptcy on it, all these things? I mean, should people start looking at alternatives other than going to college?
I am a big fan of education. I have a master's degree. I loved it, and I did. I went to school as an undergrad. I was an English major, which was certainly not going to get me a great job. But I did it, and I loved it, and I don't want to be the person who's telling people not to go to school. However, I would say that if you are going to take out a massive amount of debt, you should think about where you're going to school, how much it's going to cost you, why you need to take out that much debt. And also, we need to be organizing. This needs to be a movement. This is why I'm wearing this. This is why a lot of people around this city and around this country are now wearing this square. Because we need to understand that this is a political problem. It's not just a personal problem. It can't be solved by you taking out a little bit less or a little bit more debt each year. We need to freeze the tuition rates, the interest rates. We need to lower interest rates. We need to write down the principal on these loans. We need to fund public universities so that kids can actually go to school for free or very little money. I mean, we really need to entirely rethink the way we pay for higher education in this country.
It is a shame when people have to choose between going to college or, thinking that it's not worth it anymore. And it really is a sad state of affairs. Yeah, it's going to be a really important crisis and struggle to follow. Thanks so much for your work, Sarah Jaffe, associate editor at alternate.org.